All right, folks. So it looks like Kyle Kulinski has done another one of his secular talking smacks where he does like a live stream and answers his audience's questions. Now, he did answer an interesting one. The way this question is phrased is basically like, I believe it's just verbatim. Essentially, what are your thoughts on Bernie supporters who hate Tulsi Gabbard? So this is a very interesting issue, and this plays directly to, and he brings up Niko House, as we're going to see here in a second. But this plays into this whole really big Tulsi, very, big kind of support group that exists for, not a big support group, but a support group that is extremely vocal about their support for Tulsi Gabbard. And there was this sort of back and forth that happened between Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks and Niko House, because Anna Kasparian was doing, some pretty deep and sort of scathing critiques of Tulsi Gabbard. And Niko House, of course, the biggest fan out there of Tulsi Gabbard. So obviously they got into something, and that kind of whole thing happened. And so I think this is a good opportunity to talk about this situation, as well as to hear out what Kyle has to say here. But again, there's certainly a group of people who are incredibly vocal about their support for Tulsi Gabbard. When I say incredibly vocal, I mean extremely vocal, like crazy vocal about their support for Tulsi Gabbard. And it's a bit much, I have to say. I do have to say it for myself. But, there are people like Anna Kasparian, or you could throw David Pakman in there too, because David Pakman's a Bernie supporter, I would say a strong Bernie supporter, who does not like Tulsi Gabbard at all. So we'll kind of get into that, but let's go ahead and hear what Kyle has to say about this.
What do you think of all these Bernie supporter Tulsi haters? Yeah, I think it's a little weird. Don't get me wrong, as I've stated a million times, and I'll state a million more, and I've said this directly to, the most prominent Tulsi supporters. Me and Niko House had a long conversation that you could check out on his channel. And I like the guy. And, I like Tulsi. But yeah, I think there are legitimate criticisms of her that one can make. And I don't think it makes sense to act like any and all criticisms of her are smears, because I don't think that's true. I think there are well-meaning people on the left who say, hey, I don't agree with X, Y, and Z, and let me tell you why and what those things are. Now, I think that's fair enough. But having said that, I also do think there are a lot of really terrible, shitty criticisms of Tulsi that are out there, and people going way too far in their criticisms. And I don't think a lot of those criticisms make sense. And, I think that we should largely hold our fire on our ideological allies as much as possible.
So I want to pause really quickly there. So what he starts out there by saying is that there seems to be this idea among Tulsi supporters that basically any criticism is automatically a smear. Now, I don't even like when people like Jimmy Dore, etc., use the term smear, they don't even really know what that means, because what a smear means is based on a lie. So when I had critiqued Jimmy Dore a long time ago, people were saying that I had smeared him. When there was no lie involved. It was about him platforming Caitlyn Johnstone. They're like, oh, you're smearing Jimmy Dore. What the hell does smearing have to do with this? They don't even really know what the fuck that means. But they claim basically everything is a smear. Now, I am of the belief that there is, I think that there are a lot of good criticisms of Tulsi Gabbard, and I've talked about them before. There really are. But with that said, I think I don't dislike Tulsi Gabbard. I don't hate Tulsi Gabbard. I'm not somebody who's like a Tulsi hater or dislike or anything like that. I like Tulsi, but there are these delusional people out there who seem to be of the belief that Tulsi Gabbard is in any way superior to Bernie Sanders, when Bernie's been fighting for everything since day one, and they think that Tulsi Gabbard, whose website still has the phrase public option in the healthcare section, is going to fight for things like Medicare for all as hard as Bernie Sanders would, when she was taking corporate money like 4 years ago. It's really weird judging Tulsi Gabbard too, because she's done such a massive flip over like 2 years. It's really crazy. So I think just a couple years ago she was taking money from She was taking corporate donations in her races, and I think some people were saying that the reason she endorsed Bernie was because there was a person who was to the left of her who was going to primary her. Now, I haven't checked on that, so I'm not 100% sure if that's true. But I know for a fact that she was getting corporate money before probably 2016, that she was getting that corporate money, in her elections to run for the House. And there's a lot of shady stuff in her history. So, for example, remember when Benjamin Netanyahu, he was doing his last throw in which he was trying to throw a wrench into the Iran deal that was being constructed by Barack Obama with Iran. And what Netanyahu did was he's like, you know what? I'm going to do a speech. I'm going to give a speech to Congress without arranging it with the President of the United States. Not only am I not arranging it with him, the whole purpose is to sabotage his plan for this Iran deal. And so Republicans praised it. They loved it. They were big fans. They invited him. They're like, yeah, please come, because they were trying to get a wrench thrown in it. Bibi obviously doesn't like the Iran deal. He wants to, demolish Iran. Obviously, he wants to turn the U.S. against them. And a bunch of Democrats boycotted because they were like, what the fuck? Like, you can't do this. This is extremely unethical. And so Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, they boycotted. They didn't go. Tulsi Gabbard went, and she praised Benjamin Netanyahu. And it's super weird. You can go check it out. There's still she had put out a little, message, a little message recap after that. I read it. It was really weird. And she went to that and was like, I think this is very important and all this stuff. It's just really weird how she's made this really weird change. And another example of this. So this I found. This is on govtrack.us. So you can check this out. Basically, it has this ideology score based on, it's like a most conservative scale. So it goes from most conservative to least conservative, and it has all the representatives. Now this is for the term. This was done back in 2017. So if we look here, if we go down, I believe I already know where Tulsi Gabbard is located on here, somewhere around here. Tulsi Gabbard is right here at 298. Tulsi Gabbard right here is at 298. So she's at number 298, right? If we go down to Beto O'Rourke, he's here at number 306. So she had a more conservative record as a representative than Beto O'Rourke, because remember, this is a most conservative to least conservative scale, and so obviously Beto's here. And if we go to the bottom of the list to look at who's at the bottom, just to make sure this list is legit and not fake, dude, the people you see there are people like Barbara Lee, Raul Grijalva, who's a Justice Democrat. You see Ro Khanna, who's also a Justice Democrat. You see Keith Ellison, whose successor is I believe, I forget if her, I think it was Ohana, I believe. But Pramila Jayapal is here as well. We obviously know she's a progressive. So all these people who are down here, obviously Tulsi Gabbard should not be more conservative than Beto O'Rourke. That doesn't make any sense. And so she's way up here. She's way up here, dude. She's way up here. Likes to Seth Moulton. Seth Moulton, the guy who's an outright centrist. That's his thing. He's the bipartisan guy. That's his thing. She should be down here with Ro Khanna and Keith Ellison and Pramila Jayapal and Barbara Lee and Raul Grijalva. So this kind of stuff is very, it's concerning to me. And so that's why it's weird. Now, she's changed a ton of her positions. And when I say a ton, I mean, really, I do mean a ton. Because she honestly, she just has. And so she's different. And certain opinions that she has, I understand that she's had her, epiphany moments and all that kind of stuff. Like on her old stance on gay marriage. I totally get that. I understand that. But it's just hard to trust someone who has such a recent conservative record. And again, I don't dislike Tulsi because I think a lot of the positions she holds are legitimate. I don't think they're fake. But there are people out there who genuinely believe that Tulsi Gabbard is a better 2020 candidate than Bernie Sanders. So, that I just find to be incredibly insane.
Again, you can criticize anybody you want, but I would just say keep a sense of scale. You understand what I'm saying? So, we all know who the real people are who we cannot stomach. Those people, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, and the list goes on and on. Pete Buttigieg at this point. So, like, we know who the real hardcore centrists are. If you can roughly understand that certain candidates are more or less on your side, then just chill out a little bit. Like, you could still criticize them, but it's not, don't act like they're one of the bad guys, if you will. So, when it comes to Tulsi, when it comes to Elizabeth Warren, when it comes to Bernie, as a general rule, I think the supporters for those three, and maybe even a little bit with Yang, we could all constructively criticize each other, but generally you should just chill the fuck out a little bit. Because I can see the independent appeal of each one of those candidates. Like, I can understand why somebody would support Tulsi Gabbard as their leading candidate. I can understand why somebody would support Yang as their leading candidate. I can understand why somebody would support even Elizabeth Warren and Bernie as their leading candidates. So since I can kind of tap into that mindset, I can have sympathy and I can have a conversation with those people, and I do, and that's why I did it. I had that conversation with Niko, and I've had conversations with other Tulsis.
Yeah, see, so I get what Kyle's saying here, and I actually agree with this. I think that he's on point here, but for me personally, no, I can't see why you would have Elizabeth Warren as your leading candidate. Elizabeth Warren literally outright said she's going to take corporate money in the general election. She voted for Donald Trump's bloated military budget back in 2017. Remember the military budget where Congress gave him more money than he asked for? She voted yes on that, while Bernie Sanders voted no. She's done all this kind of, political expediency with 2016, her Israel-Palestine stuff, just all of this kind of different stuff. I mean, really, the corporate money in the general, for me, is really like I hate to say it, man, but that's a litmus test, bro. Like, you can't take corporate money. At that point, you're done. Like, I don't have any worth for you. You're taking corporate money? Are you crazy? That is like a KO for me. Now, I still see why people like Elizabeth Warren. I get that, okay? I don't see how you could have her or Tulsi Gabbard or Andrew Yang. Oh my God, that is like a total, what is wrong with you? But any of those three people, I don't see how you could possibly have them as your leading candidate, unless there's some sort of an ulterior motive or just general, lack of logic going on, basically. But I do see what Kyle is saying here, and I do think that we could probably benefit from not tearing each other apart. So, I'm not going to stop criticizing, like what I just said about Elizabeth Warren, but I'm not going to go to war with people who are like Elizabeth Warren fans. I still don't get why the fuck she'd be your leading candidate, but I'm not just going to go like crazy ham until it really gets to the point where the competition really starts, because at that point, that's when it's time to to go. That's the time when we talk these kinds of things out. That's the time we debate these kinds of things. That's the time we, do all this kind of stuff. So we're starting to get to that point, but what he's basically saying is, here, look, there's like this group of people who we already know we hate, and we need to get away from that, and we don't like them. But then there's this group where, we kind of fuck with them, right? Elizabeth Warren, Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie Sanders. I don't like Yang at all. I like Warren is cool, Tulsi is cool, Bernie's obviously, Gohan SJ2, obviously. But, I get that. I get what he's saying. And I think that he's right on this. So, Niko House, I really don't get at all why he's so, a super Tulsi fan. Not really sure why. Seems weird. But I do think that there are, some people, Anna Kasparian, I think she goes a bit far in her Tulsi critique to a point where it, gets into, overdrive. And again, I just did a critique of her right now, and I explained to you my critiques of her, but it's I don't hate Tulsi Gabbard, I don't dislike Tulsi Gabbard. I just think that you're kind of crazy if that's your leading candidate there. It doesn't make sense, because there's no record to back it up, obviously. But, I think that Kyle is pretty on point here and basically saying, hey, we all kind of need to chill out, relax. So, all of the stuff that's going on and, between, what happened with Anna Kasparian and Tulsi Gabbard, and then Niko House jumps in, obviously, because he's a Tulsi super fan. And then David Pakman jumps in as well with his opinion. David Pakman, of course, not a fan of Tulsi Gabbard at all. He immediately kind of ruled her out. It's super weird, honestly. Like, that kind of stuff is hard to analyze. Like, David Pakman's immediate, like, fervent dislike for Tulsi Gabbard, to the point where he kind of takes shots at her, like, by saying, like, oh, in his recent video, I forgot what video it was that I did on him, but he says, Tulsi Gabbard, if you don't know who Tulsi Gabbard is, she's the candidate polling at, like, 0.6, 0.6, like, just kind of taking, like, little low blows here and there. But I generally think that Kyle is on point here. But critiques are definitely warranted, but there's no reason to go to war with, Warren support. Now, the weird thing about Warren now is that what I'm noticing about Warren is there are people who are Hillary supporters who are supporting her just specifically to spite Bernie. So what do I mean by that? It's like this. I remember seeing a tweet on Twitter from one of these, resistance people where they're like, Elizabeth Warren is the candidate, Bernie Sanders thought he was. And so basically it's like this, oh, we found this person who's put out some plans for certain things, and so what we're going to do is we're going to pretend like we like this person. Like, we don't have any principles, so we're just going to say fuck Bernie, and so we're going to support Elizabeth Warren. Just for the sole purpose of destroying Bernie and this idea that he's progressive or whatever. We're going to have Elizabeth Warren, the real progressive, So that gets weird, because now you're starting to talk about Warren fans who are Hillary supporters who are only supporting her just specifically to spite Bernie. So, I would say with those people, your sort of opposition probably wants to differ with people who are Tulsi fans, who are also Bernie fans, who have him as their secondary candidate, or, and things like that. Yang fans, don't know why you'd be a fan of Yang. Probably, I don't know, just not really sure what's up there, what's going on, what's going on there. But anyways, let me know your thoughts on this down below. I'm very curious to hear them.